So today I'm answering some of the basic questions I get about using identity labels. I've been doing ACE data advice for almost 4 years now, and something that comes up again and again in the interactions I have with folks are questions about using identity labels, particularly about using identity labels that are created for and used by the ASPEC community. So I thought I would make a video that would answer some of those basic questions so that you have all the information in one place. Can I use more than one identity label? Yeah, absolutely you can use more than one. I think one of the pressures of identity labels is a kind of societal and cultural pressure for us to choose one thing that we are and to be that one thing fully and completely forever and ever until the end of time. And that is just a really unrealistic expectation. Human beings and human experience is so much more complicated than that. So it is rather wild to sort of think that you can find one label that is going to speak to the entirety of you all the time. So it makes a lot of sense that we can use multiple identity labels. We can use them in combination when they describe different parts of our experience. They can describe the complexity of our experience. Using more than one identity label makes a lot of sense because it is a better reflection of what human experience is like. So this is particularly true in an ASPEC context because ASPEC communities have created an entire language to describe many different kinds of nuances of experience within being ASPEC. And different identity labels within ASPEC contexts are talking about different parts of the ASPEC experience. So when you were talking about like saying that you are asexual but you're also aromantic, or you are asexual and demiromantic, being asexual and cupiosexual are two identity labels that can work together because they're describing certain nuances or layers of complexity within ASPEC experience. So yes, use more than one identity label. Go for it. Use as many as you need to describe what your experience is. Can I be ace and some other sexual orientation label? So this one sometimes gets a little controversial in the discourse, as we say, with some folks being really sort of rigid about definitions and saying like, if you are asexual, you can't be asexual and also bi, or you can't be asexual and also gay. But I am not in that camp. I say absolutely, yes, you can be ace and some other sexual identity label. The other labels which describe sexual orientation are culturally used in ways outside of their use as sexual orientation labels. So, gay isn't just used to describe someone's sexual orientation. It is also used in a cultural context to describe your community affiliation. It can also be used to describe your romantic orientation. Words like gay, lesbian, bisexual, pansexual, these words have cultural connotations and cultural context outside of strictly sexual orientation. And it's also important to remember that asexual does not exclusively mean not interested or never having sex or not feeling sexual attraction. The asexual spectrum is really broad. There are gray sexual folks, demisexual folks, many other folks who fall into that gray area where sometimes sexual attraction is happening. So for those folks, being ace and some other sexual identity label is necessary because it describes the fullness of their ace experience. So yes, you can be ace and some other sexual identity label as long as that is describing what your experience is or how you are seeing yourself in a cultural queer context. Do I have to use micro labels? I think micro labels sometimes get a bad rap for being unnecessary and a little bit extra, but I love those micro labels. I think they are a wonderful expression of ASPEC creativity and ASPEC assertion of the validity of ASPEC experience. But you don't have to use micro labels if they're not right for you. Not everyone wants to drill down so specifically on their experience in ways that micro labels will do. For a lot of folks, just being ace or demi or gray sexual or ace flux totally fits the bill and serves their purpose, and that's fine. Microlabels exist for those folks who feel a need to be more specific about what their ACE experience is, or who really feel some comfort and feel some sense of self and identity by digging down deeper into the nuances of microlabels. But using microlabels doesn't make you more ace than somebody else or more validly ace than somebody else. If just ace is fine for you, then ace is fine for you, but use microlabels if they're good for you. As I always say, labels are tools, not tests. We pick up identity labels, broad ones or microlabels, when they help us communicate who we are, to connect with other people who share our experience. We use them when they are useful for us. So if a microlabel isn't useful for you, don't worry about using them. Do I have to label myself at all? Ultimately, there really is no need for you to attach a label to your experience if you don't feel like that process or that action is going to benefit you. I think a lot of people feel stifled by labels. They feel that a label restricts them from exploring themselves or changing or evolving. And for those people, I think it's fine to discard labels entirely and say, like, that's just not useful. But I do think there are some reasons why using labels are a really positive thing. First, one of the most important functions of identity labels are to help us find other people who share that experience. Identity labels become a way for us to build community, to find our community, find our people, find places where we belong and can find people who understand us. That is a huge and monumental benefit of labels. Sometimes if you don't have them, it's very hard to find others who you can connect with and who you can build community with. Labels provide an avenue to do that. But there's another reason why identity labels are really valuable. Identity labels articulate something about how we are experiencing the world, how the world is experiencing us, and whether or not there are oppressions or discriminations or marginalizations that are taking place for us. For example, I may not feel sometimes a necessity to label my asexuality. However, when I use the term asexual to describe myself, I am also saying something about how I am interacting with the world. I am saying something about how the world is creating a marginalized space for me. I am saying something about discriminations I experience. Asexual carries those things too, and it helps me articulate to other people, I am living an experience that the world doesn't find a lot of favor in, and I am living in an experience where marginalization is happening. It's a slightly different function of building community. It's building community around like our needs and coalitional needs for advocacy, needs for equality, needs for equity. So even if that identity label maybe doesn't like do anything for you personally, there may be political and social reasons for you to pick up that label so that you can be part of the movement to make the world a better place for people who are experiencing that thing. But do you have to label yourself? No, not necessary, not something that one has to do. I hope the answers to these questions about identity labels were useful to you. If you have any others, please feel free to reach out or leave them in the comments. Let's help each other out in talking about identity labels. And I'll see you soon. As always, I'm really glad you're here.